You're listening to the Oneofus.net podcast network. So it's still a few months away from our favorite time of the year, which is Fantastic Fest.
It's not that far.
It's not that. It's pretty close, in fact.
It's actually
right around the corner.
Yeah, but we have like the lead up that, you know, of course we're not going to go fly out to Montreal to go because we're all too cheap.
I don't know about you, but I did.
No, you didn't, Josh.
Okay.
Lies!
But that is Fantasia International Film Festival, which I think of as essentially the sister festival to Fantastic Fest. And it's always kind of a preview of what you might be getting at Fantastic Fest this year.
Fantasia is actually really weirdly timed because it's kind of the beginning of the autumn festival season. But you actually get a lot of stuff that played
the previous
last year.
One. Yeah.
I mean, this year, for example...
At South by and stuff.
And actually some stuff that played at Fantastic Fest last year. So this year it had Mayhem and 68 Kill, both of which play, and Kodako Meatball Machine
and Tragedy Girls.
And Tragedy Girls, which played at South by, and Bad Black, which
and
played
Fashionista.
Fashionista and Bad Black, which played at Fantastic Fest last year.
So there's lots of overlap.
Yeah, but it's weird, but then it is also the previous, like you look at it and go, okay, is there stuff that we play? It's so
it's their
weirdly positioned.
international debut.
Yes.
Well, there were a couple I know that you saw this time that we actually covered on a previous Fantastic Fest review, so anything we'd previously talked about, I just took off the list. It's like, okay. But there's a lot of stuff that people were like, wait, I thought y'all didn't go. Well, Fantasia's pretty good about sending out screeners to press.
Fantasia are lovely. Thank you
so great.
So much to Ted and Emmanuel in the press office.
Yes.
We couldn't do this show without you. We really do super appreciate it.
And also, Ted, we really want to see your movie, Mohawk.
Oh, hell yeah.
Yeah, unfortunately, that was not one they had a screener available for, but it should be playing a lot of festivals very soon.
Hint.
And his last film, we all very, very much enjoyed. So,
We Are Still Here, which is fabulous.
Yes, so looking for. But he works as a film rep, and he works for Fantasia, which took place between July 13th and August 2nd. Yes, it is a very long festival. In fact, our Deliberations of Doom cohorts were there.
The Summers
Robert
brothers,
and Russell Summers. They went out there with their short film, Couples Night, that they got to show there. But they were there. We were only there for 2 days.
But they were well received.
Yeah, they were well taken care of, reportedly. Anyway.
Canadians.
Yeah.
Canadians.
They're so polite.
Know, right?
Stories are true.
Yeah. What I was like, I think I found the girl I'm going to marry. I was like, so you're staying out there? He's like, no. I was like, yep, story of visits to Montreal from what I hear. Anyway, so we saw a selection of films, and a lot of which is horror, because I specifically chased after that stuff, because originally we were hoping we'd get the whole DOD crew involved, but there was,
They're so busy. They're constantly like making movies and
I thought you were
going
going to say excuses.
Oh.
That's why you had to pull the Englishman in for emergencies.
Well, I knew that you would be watching this stuff. In previous years, you and I both get really excited when the Fantasia, because we know how nice the press is, the press people there are about sending out good stuff. And there was some really good stuff, and there was some not so great stuff.
I really want to apologize for some of the films that I chose without like really thinking them through. Some of the terrible movies we watched is all my fault.
Yeah, you threw a dart. I just picked the ones you said.
I know, so it's all my fault.
Yep. But honestly, one of my favorite movies I've seen this year is on this list, so I'm super excited about it.
I chose that one too.
Well, let's start off with, and I don't have the list in front of me, which ones you saw and which ones you didn't, Richard. Did you see this first one here?
I did.
Okay.
I did indeed see Animals.
Yes. Okay. So Animals is a film that has animals in it. What was it? It was German?
I believe it was like
it's
Polish. I don't know.
I think it's a Polish-German co-production.
Called Tier, originally, of course. And there's this couple who we see that the husband is having an affair with the upstairs neighbor who's deeply depressed about him leaving and him basically ending the relationship. But he's going off with his wife, who he's having a difficult time with. But they're going to stay off in a cabin out in the middle of Canada, somewhere in the mountains.
It's like New Zealand or something. Switzerland or something.
Where she's going to write her book, and he's a chef, and he's out there looking for recipes. Along the way, they have a small accident and hit a sheep and kill the sheep. And afterwards, nothing is quite the same. And you basically are looking at something where we keep shifting viewpoints, and it's very unclear whose eyes we're actually seeing things from, as people tend to sort of almost shift into each other's perspective as we see not only two of them, but the person who's back home taking care of their apartment who keeps getting mistaken for the upstairs neighbor, as does other people around. And more than anything, this reminded me of sort of like a sequel to Roman Polanski's The Tenant, because it has a similar feel of that sort of like you're never quite sure what's real and what's not.
The timelines are weird. You're not really sure what's going on at any given moment. And then, yeah, like you said, it through the different eyes. I mean, there's 3 or 4 different sort of things timelines going on.
And they intersect and double
and
back.
And then they double back.
It's very unclear when and what.
I mean, it's definitely very Lynchian as well. It's been compared to quite a bit. Like I said, more plot-wise, the Tenet. But, like, there's a lot of stuff here that's not really scary so much as it is just disjointing. You know, discombobulating. And there's a talking cat. So
yeah,
I'm all for that.
There's like a Black Phillip.
Yeah.
But it's a cat.
Who inexplicably speaks French, not German. Which does lead, when we were watching it, to how many sets of subtitles are on the screen at the moment?
Literally. There were several.
Well, it's because, like, the couple, aren't they? I thought the couple was actually French.
No, the couple's German.
Are they German?
They're
Okay.
German or Polish, and then the cat's French.
The cat's French.
Yeah.
And then everyone else, they are in Switzerland,
Yeah,
so everyone else is speaking...
Any one of 8 different languages. Actually, I think it's 13 different languages in Switzerland.
You have to be European in order to understand any of this. No,
I heard the other day there's 6,000 languages plus spoken in the world right now, current use. That's crazy.
Well, Switzerland has the largest number of official languages, I think, of any nation on the planet.
Jesus.
It's not big,
Well,
but everybody's multilingual. This was...
psychedelic.
It very much reminded me of another film of kind of the same ilk from about 3-4 years ago, The Strange Colour of Your Body's Tears.
Oh, yeah.
But it didn't have its discipline. Mm-hmm. And I think if you're going to play with ambiguity to this degree, the filmmaker has to have a very clear idea of what it is that they're pushing at. And I felt that this kind of looped around and did it intelligently, but I'm like, well, why? What is the point you're trying to make?
Yeah, I was
here?
on...
And I think it was like, it's really smartly done, but
I'm not sure what your motivation
any
was.
end.
And even the things that seem right from the beginning are like, oh, this is the primary things we're paying. Like, why is the girl in the upstairs apartment such a stand-in for, like, various other people? Why do other people seem to look just like her? I have no fucking clue. I didn't have a single answer to almost any of the questions this movie posed by the end of it. You have a basic idea of the events that maybe happened. You know, it's not so confusing. You have no clue, but you have no idea what order they happened.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, there was literally near the end, I was like, okay, I'm officially confused. And I feel like that doesn't happen super often, but at one point I just decided that everyone was dead, and I just was going to assume from there going forward that everyone in this movie is dead. That's the only explanation for any of this to be happening.
I mean, there was that point where I kind of started thinking the same thing. It was like, well, everything would make a lot more sense if they died in the accident.
If they're just dead.
Everything started happening weird after
Which
that.
is rather sad that if that's the only thing that makes any sense,
Yeah.
that's the most trite trick a film
Absolutely.
can play these days.
Yeah.
I think we're 20 years past that being something you can do, and it not be like, oh, well, it doesn't have to make sense. Have some internal consistency.
Agreed.
Your afterlife has to make sense, and if that's what they're doing here, which is never really clear.
Yeah.
I mean, it does do some things very well. I mean, it does plot out the relationships really well, and the lead couple, I think, are superb. I think it's, that central relationship is
And there's
great.
so many great moments that would have been terrific if they had been inside a better structured film.
Yeah.
You know, you're like, wow, that was cool. Still don't know what it means.
Yeah.
And truly beautiful scenery. That was one of the things. Some of those views that they had were just absolutely breathtaking.
Switzerland is beautiful.
It was absolutely pretty. And so, yeah, I mean, I just felt like it tried too hard. I think this is just one of those movies where the writer-director just tried to force his hand and like, oh no, it's going to be like this, when it just should have just like, okay, back off just a little bit and just let it go a little bit.
Yeah.
And
The lamb chops looked lovely.
Oh man,
That was
Totally,
that was a shot of some lamb chops, and I was like, Yeah, I'm officially peckish now.
I love that they bring the whoever owned the sheep or the lamb. Basically brought the thing fully butchered but not dissected to their house.
That's moderately standard.
Yeah, well, I mean, we live in America where we just throw it away.
Yeah, like if you kill somebody's sheep, it's like
you buy
the carcass off you, and it's like, all right, then it's like fair enough.
It was an odd moment for me, but then I was like, man, I want some lamb chops.
Yeah, it was great.
They look delicious.
All right, well, let's skip over to one that Patience I did not see, but Richard did, called Love and Other Cults. Can you tell us a little bit about this?
I really, really hope that this does play at Fantastic Fest. I absolutely adored this film. It's the new one by Eiji Achuda. The basic idea is that it starts with this schoolboy and his friends who find a basically for a good time call number on a bathroom stall, and they do. And this girl and her low level gangster handlers turn up and go, "So, want to have sex?" And they're like, "Okay, yeah, fine," but. Which seems like the setup for your typical slightly sleazy high school Japanese drama. But what it actually is a character study of this central character, this girl, who desperately wants to find some kind of meaning, and her life is completely screwed up by the fact her mother just runs from religious organization to religious organization, and she just wants to have some degree of meaning in her life. And she's the through character. Meanwhile, all these surrounding characters are kind of bouncing off the Yakuza and who actually is going to go down this path and who's going to manage to get something like a life together. And it's beautifully non-judgmental. It has these characters who you feel are very broken. It's weirdly been categorized as a comedy, and I think that's a complete mislabeling of it. There are some humorous moments,
but decidedly not a comedy.
And
seems like almost a romance in a weird sort of way.
There is an element of that. Particularly when you get to the end, you're kind of like, oh, this is actually very sweet for a film that is built around gang wars, prostitution, and the porn industry. Which is something that Achuda has dealt with in his earlier work.
Always warms the cockles of my heart.
This really
and my
is.
cock.
It's he said cock.
It's going to be that kind
sorry,
of podcast.
Richard. Sorry,
it's always that kind of podcast. But one of the really interesting things about it is it does have a black Japanese character, which you don't see them depicted very often, and he's not an outsider character. He's just one of the guys. And I was expecting them to make more of that,
right?
And they don't. Which is kind of a wonderful underplaying of it. I think it worked really
That's really
powerfully.
cool.
That is
I
cool. I don't know if I've ever seen a black Japanese character
rare.
in a film.
Very, very rare. But this was. I found this oddly touching. I really hope this is something that is going to turn up elsewhere on the festival circuit. Because Achuda, he's done other stuff that's not been as well recognised. I think this has the potential to put him on the same kind of trajectory that you see with somebody like Sion Sono
who I love to pieces.
Who directed The Yellow River?
Oh shit, I can't remember the name, but yeah.
That the same kind of path that those guys are on, of Asian directors who are able to throw you through for real curveballs, but have a real sense of humanity and compassion to them that even when they're dealing with the crime world, and not with the Takeshi Miike everybody's scum, but this kind of
right.
redemption. You really feel for these characters, and this really impressed me. I really hope this turns up elsewhere in the festival season.
Cool. That is again Love and Other Cults. All right, well, let's talk about one we saw. Did you see Le Manoir?
I did not.
Okay,
Oh,
we did get to see this one. I thought this was okay. I didn't like. I started to dislike it more towards the end, where I was like, "Oh, that's all you got." But the idea is this group of students who are, your typical batch of really horrible young people. I often wonder, is it just because I'm getting old that I think that all the young people in horror movies are awful, or are they just, or is that just a trope that's been around forever of all young
almost
people?
The same age, so
yeah.
maybe.
I don't know. I actually do think that there is a more of a tendency to write all young characters as vaguely obnoxious, and then you try and find a little bit of a redemptive path for them later on in the film. Which actually another one of the films that showed Fantasia, which also played at South by, Game of Death. Every single character is pretty unlikable until you get this one character who kind of comes out the end, and she's okay, but only because she becomes a blatant nihilist by the end, and that's the closest to redemption. Yeah, so
we talked about that at Fantastic Fest, which is why I took it off the list.
But, that was Game of Death was South by.
South by, sorry, yeah.
I wanted to see that one.
But it's New Year's Eve.
You didn't miss much.
This is a group of French kids who are all okay, this guy's the stoner guy,
I mean,
this girl's the slutty girl.
Literally every single one of them is like a character.
And the way I'm watching this, I'm kind of like, okay, so it feels like maybe that this is going to be a meta take on horror films, right? Like this is like they're being so utterly like stringent about sticking to these old tropes that it's got to be. Right, like making fun of it, and that's the biggest disappointment when you realize, no, not really. It felt like more like these people just loved those movies and wanted to make a movie like that with their own particular twist. As in this huge mansion that they inexplicably got the rights to stay in for New Year's Eve, one of them turns up dead, literally hanging from the ceiling from a rope tied to his penis. Which that was the thing. Everyone was always like, "Oh, he's got a big dick."
Straight to the penis.
He's got a big dick. That guy's got a big dick, and he's like, "Man, stop talking about my dick." I'm like, you know what? There's a lot of things people have a real right to complain about, but people saying that you have a big dick is not one of them.
I think we know what size Chris is.
Oh, it's micro penis. Make no mistake. And yeah.
Good night, folks.
No hang-ups here.
It turns into one of those, like, one at a time. They're getting killed off, and it looks like it's a supernatural killer, possibly. But then as it goes along, it looks like it's not. And then there's a big twist. And by the end, I was like, okay, so I see why no one here is really a redeemable character, because then you might figure out who the killers are. If anybody has a tiny smidgen of likability about them, you'll start to be able to put people off in groups and decide who should be where.
I thought it was totally apparent right away who the killers were. But I mean, I think brilliant movies such as Cabin in the Woods have ruined this genre for me. I don't know if it's just me or if it's just the genre, but like this whole, we're in a house and people are killing us off one by one, like it's so overdone and it's so blatantly obvious, and none of these characters were like redeemable in any way.
You have
I
to
hated
bring
all of them.
something either really new and unexpected to it, or you just have to have writing that is so sparkling with the dialogue that, like, Aaron Sorkin wanted to make a slasher film or something, you know? Like, I'd watch that no matter what the plot was, as long as it's fun to watch. But these people, you just want them to die.
It's just dick jokes and poop jokes, and I mean, literally, it just wasn't funny.
And not even the gore that's there. It's like, well, it's just really not that much to it. So, anyway, really kind of disappointed with Lemon Noir, but overall, I thought it was watchable, you know?
It wasn't the worst film we watched.
No, it was not the worst film we watched.
Yay, faint praise!
Well, I know your worst film, so let's just segue into that, and that is The Night Watchman.
Oh, this was so bad.
Once again, this is one I didn't have as much of a problem as you did with, but it's not a good movie. This is a straight-up horror splat-stick comedy, stoner comedy, I should specify, because boy, does it wear that on its sleeve. That is 3 Night Watchmen, 2 older school ones. Well, actually, technically, it's 4, I guess. There's and then the new kid who's just come in.
I mean, this is a weird thing. This is a horror comedy, and the most ridiculous thing about this is that there's supposed to be a weekly newspaper that can afford 4 full-time security officers and a bank of security. Where? What glorious overfunded news outlet is this? Because I will work there in a heartbeat.
It's probably that one in France that got shot up. Just saying.
Oh. No. That's just drunk French guys satirizing shit.
Fair enough. But yeah, this movie, it starts with like a little, during the credits, like, oh, there was a killing thing and where this famous European clown died, and then his body was being shipped back to this country.
No, I think he's supposed to be a famous Baltimore clown.
Is he?
Because that's why everybody goes, oh, Bimpo. I recognize Bimpo.
Yeah.
So I think that's supposed to be the whole thing. Is like they recognize him.
Well, I know he's supposed to be a world famous clown.
Yeah, world famous, but he's being shipped back home to Baltimore, and it's like it just I don't care.
So the body is like ends up by accident in the driving bay of this place where the Watchmen are, and they're like, well, whatever. They take a bribe to basically so the guy doesn't have to redeliver
Was it a FedEx delivery by chance?
Yeah, right. I wonder how many of my neighbors just own movies I was supposed to get over the years. Anyway, and then it turns out Blimpo is in this thing, and turns out he's a vampire, like the rabid feral type. Clownpire. And chaos erupts as instead of this is not a slow, one at a time, the people are turning into a vampire. No, it's pretty much flat out like zombie movie more, very quickly.
Zombies.
As the whole office is covered in blood, like multiple floors of it, and these guys are trying to figure out how to survive and smoking lots of pot and making lots of fart jokes.
Seriously, this movie's for 12-year-old boys. I mean, it's beyond, I think, even the stoner demographic. This movie is for 12-year-old boys because it's literally just like sexist jokes and fart noises for an hour and a half.
You know what I suspect happened with this? Is I think somebody wrote an office vampire comedy and was like, yay, we're ready to go with this. Yay, it's going to be great. And then somebody went, have you seen that Fran Kranz movie, Bloodsucking Bastards? And they sat down and went, oh shit, we got money for this. Damn, it's going to be exactly the same film. Let's add clowns. So that's the
who, by the way, are like an afterthought. Like, you have the clown in the beginning, and then he just flat out disappears for the bulk of the film.
I think they made this film and then realized it was exactly the same as Bloodsucking Bastards.
And then
just added the before and after clowns.
For like a couple of scenes. And if you notice, they're mostly in cutaway scenes.
That's true.
They're not actually on screen with the cast itself. And I suspect that's what happened, is just that they made the film and somebody had done a slightly more humorous version, mainly because Frank Kranz is a lot of fun.
You're probably right on the money on that one.
Yeah, it sounds accurate to me. As well as
don't feed the ego, kids.
There was a lot of effects work on gore and a lot of splat stick stuff here, and some of which is not bad at all. With the clowns, it's like they put in almost zero effort with every scene that they're in. You're almost like, wow, for whatever reason, the clowns just look like regular guys wearing clown makeup, and they're pretty much most of their scenes aren't all that gory.
And he calls the other clowns by his big rubber nose. I literally tuned out.
Yeah, or his horn.
Yeah.
The thing is, if you're going to do horror clowns, you've got, particularly when you're doing splat stick stuff, you're competing with Killer Clowns from Outer Space and Stitches. You don't have a lot of space, and to just do it in such a shoddy manner in what would have been an okay vampire office movie, and instead you make it those elements actually make something that was in something much worse. For
big mayhem, it's about to say mayhem of the three recent lots and lots of killings going on in an office building is by far the top runner for between this, the Belko Experiment, and Mayhem. Mayhem is the winner by a sizable margin.
Country Mile.
Which we reviewed at South by. Still thoroughly recommended. It's not available anywhere yet unless you're at a festival, but once it is out, go see it.
Who picked it up?
But it's not out yet.
It's been acquired.
Good, because it's good.
Fourth quarter this year.
Really enjoyed that.
Great film. Hi, Joe.
I'm excited about that.
So talk about one a little bit, more down the sci-fi horror realm, and that's Sequence Break, or as they like to call it, man, I really liked Videodrome a lot growing up.
Yeah, I was going to say, holy Cronenberg.
I kept calling it Video Game Drone. But which is not to compare it to the quality of Videodrome, which is one of my favorite horror movies.
Or Existence, even.
Yeah. The idea is this guy works in, did I say the title? Sequence Break? Yep. This guy works in a arcade repair shop where they repair old arcade games, amongst probably other smaller, older electronic items, with the older guy who works there in the shop. And they deliver a new game there, and the game starts kind of possessing?
Well, no. The homeless dude leaves a motherboard in an envelope, and then he puts the motherboard into the old arcade game.
it's alive
it starts,
somehow.
possessing him
Yeah, like,
in some
like
way.
there's scenes he's playing it and his hands are sinking into it, like in Videogram with the TV, where it's like it's all veiny and stuff and sexualized. And meanwhile, there's a girl who'd come into the shop who he hits it off with, and he starts being afraid that the same thing's going to happen to her. So he's like, "No, stay away from the machine." While at the same time,
he goes darker, deeper
into it.
Yeah.
And I mean, it's okay. It's just like it's so clearly like just a knockoff of Videodrome that I'm like, I get that your producers probably thought this was wildly original, but I'm just going to assume they never saw Videodrome.
No, I got to say, you can't. That analysis does not stand up.
Okay.
Because this is Graham Skipper.
Uh-huh.
Now, Graham Skipper, he's been in Mind's Eye, a bunch of, he's part of that whole...
He's an actor, right?
Beyond the Gates.
Beyond the Gates. He's part of that whole coterie
Park.
of, 80s retro revivalists. Almost Human as well. He was in that. He knows that stuff. And he's the writer-director here. He very definitely knows what his references are. He knows what he's playing with. He knows that people are going to go, oh yeah, there's that. That whole movement... Their films are somewhat successful to almost successful.
Sure.
I think in a lot of ways is knowing that that's what they're playing with and that's what they're going for, is that element of recognition with them. I think this is actually the best of the bunch they've done so far. Mm-hmm. Because Graham Skipper I think is great. He's I like Graham Skipper. I think he does kind of slack-jawed, but there's some emotional depth there, better than a lot of people. I just think that this came together for me, particularly because I think while it's meandery and short at the same time, which usually is an unforgivable sin, I think the central relationship was kind of nice, and I liked the end, which I think actually delivered on what they'd done, because it took a very gaming concept and did it well. It does also remind you that a lot of mid-80s video games, particularly cabinet games, were fucking weird.
Yeah, they were
just abstract art.
Right. Well, they had a limited palette of tools to work with, so it was basically about how do we create different sprites and make them move in a different way without being able to do that much for the possibility of depth or gameplay. I see what you're saying, but still, much like all those other films, like especially like Beyond the Gates, I'm like, the whole thing just feels like one giant wah-wah to me, I'm watching it very unamused, looking at some of the practical effects and going, that's kind of cool looking, but I just don't care about these characters. And the end especially, I was like, come on, guys, really? That just felt like a bad joke to
me. For me, immediately, I was kind of excited about this movie because as soon as I heard that soundtrack, I was like, this is going to be awesome, because the soundtrack was so nostalgic and really captured those 80s, movies that we know and love so much. But then going through the movie, it's just so incredibly redundant. I mean, literally the same sequence of events happens like 3 or 4 times. Like, he plays the video game, he gets sick, the girl's like, maybe you should go to the doctor. Oh, no, I'm fine. They get drunk. He plays the video game, and literally this happens for like an hour. And at one point I was just like, okay, can somebody die or just something happen? Because I was so like, okay, let me guess, he's gonna get sick and not go to the doctor. It was so redundant for me, and I was bored.
And
after.
You fucked an arcade game, so you're like, it's not like that.
It's totally not like that at all. And how did you know that?
Oh, nothing. Don't worry about it.
Yeah, I think your mileage is going to
obviously going
to vary a lot on this. I like the repetition, because I always felt like that keyed into the idea of like, a lot of games are repetitive to a certain degree. I think it kind of tapped into that and did some interesting stuff with that. I think this is, like I said, I think this is one of the better components of that movement. I still think they're really trying to find what it is exactly they're trying to do. I think it's like, in the same way that I think the Astron 6 guys, I think, with The Void, we played at Fantasia Fest last year, I think that was the most successful thing that's come out of there, and I think they finally started to find their voice. I think this is them getting closer to what it is they really going to want to do. I think it's boundlessly better than Beyond the Gates, which I did not get why everybody raved about.
Yeah,
that one left me cold.
I was all excited to watch it because I'd heard so much good stuff and went like, really? That was it?
Yeah.
That was what? Are you just excited because it reminds you of your childhood and that's it?
Yeah.
Okay.
I mean, admittedly,
it was Jumanji horror.
If you want something where it's playing with somebody kind of splitting their life apart and trying to put it back together in a very almost schizophrenic manner. I think Buster's Malheart, which just came out on DVD, does it an awful lot better.
Agreed.
But I got a lot of patience for what.
What?
Not your name. Got their patience.
For what Graham Skipper's reaching for here, and at a brisk 80 minutes. There's far worse.
It was only 80 minutes?
Yeah,
God, I thought it was like 3 hours long.
So you thought it was Graham Skippy.
Yeah. Actually, no, Night Watchman's shorter.
Is it?
Yeah.
Wow. Jeez, that is short. Felt long, though.
Yeah.
All right, so tell us about Meatball Machine Kadoku, or you can reverse that if you want, like they did at the festival.
Whereas they do... it's a Japanese title,
Yeah,
so...
it's hard to say.
What a very, very oddball little film this is. This is a quasi-sequel to... Yoshihiro Nishimura's Kodako, which was 2010, I want to think, which is almost kind of a comedy version of Tetsuo.
Right. I've seen Tokyo Gore Police by the same guy.
Oh, yeah.
Which is, when I read that was this, I was like, oh, okay, I know there's probably nothing wrong with this film, and fans of this sort of... there's even a name for this genre? I mean, I feel like Ichi the Killer was the one that started it all, and then it turned into its own genre of
because of the
hyper gore action.
Well, yeah, this is really the comedy end of Japanese gore, but this is kind of is a really strange little one. The basic story is that there's this debt collector who's very bad at being a debt collector, who suddenly discovers that he's got cancer.
As all debt collectors should get.
And goes, screw it. I'm going to actually go and collect the money. Manages to get himself on the wrong side of a bunch of gangsters in a bar, and then in a totally unrelated plotline, a massive jar descends over central Tokyo, and half the population becomes infected by these alien probes that turn them into killing machines. And the method by which they kill other people is their fetish. Okay.
So whatever, like if I was really into stockings, I would die with one wrapped around my neck.
No, you'd kill people with your stockings.
Oh, I see.
And the whole idea is, it's set up at the beginning that a Kodako is this old Japanese idea of you put a bunch of venomous and toxic animals in a pot together, and the one that survives... you take it and use its venom, and that is the most powerful poison on the planet and will give you mystical powers.
Right.
How this ties in with the giant jam jar and the alien probes is actually kind of fun. The central performance by the guy who plays the debt collector, who becomes one of these murder machines, but his cancer kills the probe that's trying to control him.
Wait, so he has a cancer fetish?
No, his cancer actually kills it. So he has all the powers without being motivated to kill people uncontrollably.
So he's the cancer is that one thing that gives him...
you actually have this great bit of cancer killing an alien probe in his head. It was actually, you kind of go, that's gross and kind of fun. This is gross and kind of fun. Mm-hmm. It's definitely bonkers. I mean, it's coming to the end of its festival run. I think it's been acquired. There's
obviously a market for these movies. What was it? Machine Girl was another one.
Yeah, I mean the market's kind of slowed down a little bit. We've not really seen anything quite like this in really 3 or 4 years. I think Japanese horror and Japanese filmmakers are in a very different direction at the moment. They're kind of more going for big budget crowd pleasers at the moment. As proven by the
Sadako versus Kayako.
Yeah, things like that.
Which I still can't recommend enough, by the way.
It's on Shudder.
Yep.
Yeah, this is actually kind of a bit of a breath of fresh air, and one of the more well-rounded, better plotted Japanese splatter films.
Okay.
It's okay. It's not terrible. You do have to be in the right mood for it. If you're not, then you're really going to get quite annoyed by it quite fast. But if you are, you're going to be like, this is fun and stupid and weird.
I feel like we do need to come up with a name for this genre, because it's definitely a genre.
Japanese splatter porn.
Yeah, I think
that sounds really
hyper
good.
splat
It was like, I think it had a name, but it never really translated well into English.
Yeah, right.
I think J Splatter was thrown around a lot.
J Splat.
Yeah.
Sounds like a hip-hop star.
I'm sure there is one.
Probably. All right, so let's talk about one we all saw called Tragedy Girls, although Richard saw this at South by, right?
Yes.
Okay. This is it's Clueless if the two main girls in it were sociopaths who decided the only way they were going to find any joy in life is by becoming serial killers and kidnapping a serial killer and trying to get him to tell them how to be better serial killers. My biggest problem here is there's absolutely no one to root for in this movie whatsoever. I mean, it really is trying to pretend like it's a satire, like a bloody satire of Clueless, kind of, because these girls they're, really shallow Alicia Silverstone types, and the whole thing with the killer, who you're like, oh, well, this is the one actor we really recognize here, Kevin Durand, who's a character actor who's been in a ton of stuff, is introduced in the beginning and then largely ignored until he's got to come back at the end to be the thing to make the movie wrap up, basically.
Yeah, it really feels like he came on set for a couple of days and then they couldn't afford him.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's
just kind of weird because he's so good.
Or maybe he's a friend of somebody, a friend of a friend or something.
It could be. Craig Robinson as well, who's a producer on this, has a small role, who's basically just here to be one of the victims that's amusingly killed. And I will hint at this, there's some creative kills in this thing, and there was a few laughs in it, and especially when it comes to, oh shit, that didn't work out the way we planned it to go, but they're dead anyway, so it's okay. But it's really hard to get behind a comedy when everyone is so unlikable in such a realistically unlikable way.
This was actually my favorite movie that we watched.
Now going to be keeping an eye on you.
I really like it. As a female who represents the horror genre, I absolutely loved seeing female serial killers. Finally, thank you very much. I mean, I know we've seen them in the past. I know that it was Jason's mom. I get it, but. It was so nice to see, like, a young, fresh take on the serial killer genre. We have these two, like you said, Clueless-type girls. They're in it for the Twitter followers. They're definitely horror lovers. There's a lot of, like, nice little horror Easter eggs in this movie that you're just, like with Romero on in the background, or their ringtone is, like, the Halloween.
Sure.
So they're definitely horror lovers, and I love that about them. I wasn't really sure why they needed a male mentor, other than I feel like they were just decided that they were going to blame everything on him.
Yeah, that seemed to be like their goal, but then you're kind of like, well, I'm not really. Like, he just leaves the movie until they need him again for the denouement.
Yeah.
Okay, you had me at the idea of two girls want to be tutored by a serial killer, and if it turned into something more like if two girls from Clueless were in Man Bites Dog, I would want to watch that movie. And Kevin Durand, who's such a great character actor.
He is, and he was even great in this, too.
Yeah, like, oh man, I could watch him all day. And then he's just barely in this. Josh Hutcherson's another moderately big name who's in this for all 5 minutes and then is killed off.
I was really mostly worried throughout the film that they were just going to go the super cliche, like, girls fighting amongst each other, kind of, I'm jealous kind of a thing. And they did try and go there, but I was pleased that they the way that it ended. I was pleased that they kept true to, like, okay, let's be something different and let's be, like, not go with all of the cliches that girls often have when they are, or the tropes, in horror movies when it comes to women.
Well, I think this had two things really good about it. Brianna Hildebrand, I think was great. Who people probably better know as Negasonic Teenage Warhead from Deadpool.
Oh, that's why I recognize her.
And it was pretty clear that they shot this afterwards, because that haircut is, I shaved my head and my hair has now grown out.
Okay.
That's what it looked.
All right. I could not place her
and
face.
She's really good. And I think she has the most consistent arc, and you really felt there was some depth to her character. Whereas everybody else really felt like they felt like they knew they were in a horror spoof.
They kept teasing that she had depth and not following through.
Yeah, but I think there wasn't anything in the script for her to really play with. I think she brought that out. I thought she was really good. The other thing I really liked was it's very, very rare that any film ever manages to get social media right. Mm-hmm. And this does.
Yeah.
And I was really shocked by it. And having sat through garbage like #horror.
Oh God!
Lynch, and endured.
Now I have PTSD again.
It thought it was Lynch, it was Flinch.
Nice one.
Having sat through that, and you see, like, you don't get how this really works. You don't understand. This did. You were like, you know how this operates.
Well, I mean, they literally start quoting out facts about how social media operates.
Yeah, and I was like, thank goodness you understand this, and you build it into the plot, and you're not afraid, because most people, they're so afraid of it feeling dated,
right,
that they won't make it in any way contemporary. And I think by them making contemporary, it actually gives this more life than if they come up with a bunch of fake platforms. So I was actually, that was good. The rest of it was like, you're a horror comedy. It feels like everybody in it knows they're acting in a horror comedy.
There's a lot of winking at the camera.
It's very meta.
Lots of visual stuff that feels like if you were watching this on YouTube with After Effects added in, what they would add into a YouTube video, but in the course of just the regular film.
I just could not engage with this. I was like, it's well done, and
that's the thing.
Well, and it's clever.
It is well done,
but it's not
clever, but it's not engaging.
No.
Yeah,
I disagree. I was highly entertained.
Once again, keeping my eye on you.
I'm looking at you, Chris.
I'm not turning my back to you.
Particularly, I think, having recently watched Capture Kill Release, which is super low budget found footage horror about a couple who want to try and create their own snuff movie. And it ties in concepts of it ties in on concept of found footage, of of POV porn, and it does all these incredible things. I was like, holy shit, that was done on nothing.
Oh, I'm putting that on my list.
I really liked it. Some people hate it. I was really blown away by it. And you compare how that understands how people engage emotionally with video technology, and you look at this and you go, yeah, you get that bit right. You understand it, but I don't buy your characters in that.
Right.
But apart from, like I said, Brianna Hildebrand, because I think she just goes, I am way better than this material. And I think this proves that she's definitely somebody to watch. And the fact she's going to take daring parts like this. She could just go down the safe studio franchise road quite easily, and instead she goes, this is something interesting to do. So, yeah.
Indeed. All right, so let's take a look at Killing Ground. Actually, this is probably my second favorite of the films we saw.
I specifically chose this film because you hated Wolf Creek.
Yeah, I did. And this is by the same guy who pretty much the other main thing he did other than Wolf Creek. He's had a few other movies, but this is probably his other highest profile thing. And I despise Wolf
Was it
Creek.
the same guy? I didn't know that.
Never saw the second one because why would I after I hated the first one as much as I could?
I know.
Am I wrong? Is it not the same guy?
I don't know.
I thought
you could be, right?
You know what? I'm wrong. I'm sorry. There was something else though that was by the Wolf Creek guy.
It's all Australians.
Maybe it was I don't know. My apologies, but it does have a somewhat of a Wolf Creek feel to it. It's this couple that's out on a camping trip, and then it's flashing to this other couple and their kid that's out on a camping trip in the same place. And it's not very long into the film when you realize that this is non-linear. That
there's two different timelines.
Are taking place at a different time. So it's not like that's a big reveal. You figure it out pretty quickly. And you also figure out pretty quickly that whatever these local two rednecky guys are into, hanging around the local gas station and hanging around the camp spot, it ain't going to end up well for anybody. And as these two timelines start to converge, it turns into a survival tale that ends up being very, dominated by a strong female character and not in like a more traditional screamy final girl sort of way. And a sort of like, wow, she's the one who seems to be making the smartest decisions here for sure.
Except she does fall at least once, which I hate in the chase scenes.
Well, you do fall during chase scenes.
Whatever.
I fall a lot when I'm being chased by a guy with a chainsaw. I'm all over the place. Yeah. I'm like, shit, where did I put that book written in blood?
Oh, darn it. What are the words? Veratu... Oh, no.
Yeah, the camera closes in on me like John Cusack. Keys!
How is somebody chasing you with a bandsaw?
Hey, you obviously have never been out to Pace Bend Park, so...
What have they got? A portable generator and a trolley?
Yeah, I said a chainsaw.
No, you said bandsaw.
I don't even know what a bandsaw is, so I think I said
bandsaw. I was like, what? Are they following around with a complete
They come with
workshop?
lithium-ion batteries now.
Okay. I like to say, I'm not sure what a bandsaw is. If I said that, that was really a weird slip. But I don't know. I enjoy this. I thought that was stylish. It takes too long to get where it's getting. But overall, once it did, I found it pretty tense and enjoyable. It's not like a masterpiece or anything, but this is something where I'm like, I am now officially interested in the work of Damien Power, and I want to see other stuff by him, what he's going to do next. It's, not overly bloody, but when it does do it, it's shocking. It's like when it decides to show you gore, it's upsetting and very shocking and very visceral in an immediate way and not in a gorehound sort of way.
Yeah, Australian horror tends to be some of my favorite films because they are not afraid. Unlike American horror, Australian horror films are not shy. And this one definitely held back until it didn't. And you're just like, oh, okay, this is what I was looking for. This is what I was expecting, I guess you could say, when it comes to Australian horror. But I really liked the simultaneous timelines. I thought that it really built the tension, even though you know what's going on and you know what to expect. It really helped.
You know where it's going, but it has where it both, like, because the first one storyline is going to culminate about at the end of the second act.
Yeah.
And the other one's going to culminate at the end of the third act, and you're dreading the ending as you would the end.
Yeah.
Like, you've got two endings to this horror movie, basically.
Yeah,
both of which
exactly.
you're emotionally invested in.
Exactly. And you are invested in these characters, both sets of characters you're definitely invested in. And you do, and the other thing that I kind of liked about this movie is that you also get to see the killers in their natural habitat, which is something you don't often get to see when it comes to horror films. Like, you usually don't pay a lot of attention to, like, oh, this is how they live their lives on a daily basis, but you get to kind of that little inside look into the two serial killers, I guess they are, lives.
I mean, possibly.
Yeah. This actually reminded me, the whole first part of the movie actually reminded me of an excellent British film called Eden Lake.
Hey!
He said British!
With, I think it was Michael Fassbender was in that film, and with the two tents on the beach kind of thing. That's how sort of Eden Lake started, but Eden Lake is a much more brutal film than this one is.
I still need to get around to Eden Lake. That's been on my bucket list.
It's difficult to watch.
I've heard.
But highly worth it if you give it a shot. This film's already out, by the way. It's on video on demand already.
Oh, okay. So
I saw it the other day, I think, on Amazon Prime. So,
all right.
Yeah, definitely give it a look. I liked it. This was definitely probably my second or third favorite film that we watched.
Okay. Well,
but I'm into it.
Give one for Richard here that he saw that we did not, which was Bad Black. Tell us about Bad Black.
Bad Black, which is...
You watched some weird stuff, Richard.
Oh, I did. Well, part of it was I was doing some catch-up, because this is something that played Fantasia Fest last year. Wakaliwood!
Well, what is that?
Ugandan action cinema.
What? That's a genre now.
No. Wakaliwood is one guy in Uganda who is making films basically with whatever he can find and his friends.
Nabwana IGG?
That's the guy. And they're terrible. I mean, he's basically just grew up watching whatever he could find on VHS.
I love it.
And he, building his editing suite is secondhand computers that he's Frankenstein together to be able to edit stuff on. I mean, like, this guy is doing stuff with literally nothing. They tried to come over to Fantastic Fest a couple of years ago, but couldn't because he doesn't have a passport, because he doesn't have a birth certificate, because the guy was born on a trash heap. I am not kidding about this.
Jesus.
This guy's, like, the fact he's getting anything made is amazing.
Burgeoning filmmakers out there in America, you have no
excuses. But what really actually makes this kind of fun, because it really is like, this is not good, is that he goes, you know what? There's this great tradition in Ugandan and African TV of having somebody talk over and narrate what is happening, and they're called VJs. And he has that, and he's basically just this guy talking over the film and occasionally explaining this or going, oh, that's her cousin. or this bit's boring. There's a bit where they go,
What?
this bit's boring, and they fast forward through a trial sequence to the end.
That's amazing.
And it's not. I mean, I am not going to say this is great filmmaking, but the guy has incredible gumption to make this stuff. And then when you put the VJ over the top, you're just like, what am I watching? This is kind of awesome. It's like it glosses over the fact that this is, and it's this. There's a point where one character falls into a ditch, and he just goes, "That's poop, Ugandan poo poo. He's in poo poo." And then later on, somebody falls into some more, and he just goes, "Ugandan poo poo." And it's like, and it's there's kind of some weird stuff where it'll suddenly go very serious, and it's about children being drawn into the criminal life in Uganda, and then 10 minutes later, it's this kid called Wesley Snipes. I'm not kidding you, teaching a doctor how to be a commando. It makes not a lick of sense, but it's surprisingly good fun.
Wow. So it's like ultra cheap blaxploitation from Uganda.
Yeah.
Like Sweetback's badass song.
Oh,
with a VJ.
No, it's more like Dolomite with a VJ.
Or what was the Dolomite, the most crazy one where he's Satan or whatever?
Oh, yeah.
For PD something. PD Wheatstraw.
Yeah.
It supposedly makes Dolomite look like Citizen Kane.
This is not at any level good filmmaking, but it has heart and gumption and is oddly entertaining if you are in the right place, which will probably involve don't watch this on your own. Have people around, because you'll all want to go, fuck. Are you kidding me?
Well, our next film is November, that I would argue is something you should not watch unless you've mainlined some sort of massive amount of caffeine or uppers into your system, because this is a very slow, very long film that is based on Eastern European mythology, and I'll be honest, I'm not entirely clear what was happening in this plot, but as best as I can make it out...
Wait, there was a plot?
Yes. It was 19th century Estonia. It follows this group...
Ooh, and nothing says thrill a minute like 19th century Estonia.
Right? I actually, weirdly, the same day watched another Estonian film that I didn't realize was 1944, which was much better.
There's some good shit coming out of Estonia. They've actually got a really good film festival, Black Sea Festival.
I've been told that it's a burgeoning industry.
Yeah.
But it follows this girl, Lena, a young peasant girl. She lives with her father and a magical creature made out of farm implements that talks.
A crot.
A crot. Which is, for whatever reason, a major part of the plot of this movie that involves you have to sell your soul to have it put into to animate a crot, which people do basically because they need them to help them do work around the farm so they can feed their families.
This, strangely enough, wasn't the worst part of that film.
But there's a big winter coming. Everybody's really worried. People are like, there's a whole thing where like once a year there's a ritual, a ritual of the dead where they celebrate their dead. Only the dead literally show up and they feed them and have conversations, and then the dead go back. And something about a church being robbed that I was unclear on.
Yeah,
but
that
ultimately
didn't
the story is supposed to be this weird love triangle where a local peasant boy who the main female character is in love with and wants to seduce, he's in love with the local rich girl whose dad is Dieter Laser, for the record, from Human Centipede. I was like, what? Is that Dieter Laser? I can't believe I remember that guy's name, but then again, it is Dieter
Laser. That's my porn name.
And, the devil becomes a character in this, or at least the Estonian version of the devil, which is just an old...
Which is just Dieter Laser.
It looks more like Santa Claus if we went to a rave or something, and there's, lots of, the main girl, she can transform into a wolf, and I don't know, there's so much shit going on in here. By the end, I was like, well, that was the thing I just saw.
I was so confused. First of all, this is definitely not a horror film.
No.
I don't even know what to call this. It's just a weird, trippy love triangle. I don't know. But ultimately, I mean, there's some really gross moments in this film that I was just like, there's a lot of poop eating. Yeah. Just FYI. There's a lot of the consumption of poop. And then there's a lot of spitting and licking. Yeah. And I was just, at one point, they're spitting out their just
poop.
No, they take poop. Communion, and then they just mash down their communion wafers and spit it into this dude's hand so that they can use it on their arrows.
No, for bullets.
For their bullets.
They get them put into bullets because, like, well, then, like, you
Jesus,
can't miss because it's Jesus' flesh
body.
now. It's been transubstantiated. So
they're definitely, they're like pagans, and there's definitely some confusion as to the religious ideals of this, I guess, small community, this
there's
village.
Lots of witches that are not evil.
There's the Crocs, there's the devil that
Yeah.
shows up unexpectedly in the end for no... I'm like, okay, so he'll kill you if you make a crot at any time.
Eventually.
Yeah, but you don't know when.
But then the one guy tricks him and is like, aha, I did berries instead of blood, but it's too late, you already made my crot, haha.
Or something. I don't know. It was really black and white.
It's just people who love
artsy,
hyper
fartsy,
arty,
yep.
Very slow moving. But I mean, there's a lot of creative stuff in here, but it doesn't really fit into any sort of larger narrative.
Boring, and it doesn't make any sense.
Well, let's move on to something else then, which I thought was much better. The third favorite film for me for this festival, which I feel like I might like better if I saw again.
I agree. This was like on my top of the film.
This is definitely one that they were promoting very heavily. They clearly were like, we think this is one that has legs and can get proper distribution. And it kept being, everywhere I looked, they were trying to compare it to Donnie Darko. It's not Donnie Darko. It's nowhere near as clever as that film, or even some of the other films that I've read about that were inspired by it. But it is an interesting story set in mid-90s suburbia. It's they're very typical high school kids, best friends Josh and Zach. They're, both kind of nerds, but they both support each other and help each other with all the shit that you have to deal with in high school. One day, basically that tertiary friend that you have in groups, that guy who's kind of the fat guy who you let in
Phil,
because you're nerds, but
Phil.
His
Phil?
name.
It's always a Phil.
It's always a Phil.
It's like, should we get Phil?
Ours was a Bob. But the guy he's obviously the one everybody else picks on, and you pick on him too, but at least you let him hang out with you. He, in a total accident, ends up dying at the hands of one of the other guys, the kids. And the rest of the movie is kind of a, like...
The kids being, like, really super...
film.
Yeah.
As the one kid who did it, who is, I believe was in Stranger Things, if I'm not mistaken, right?
I don't know.
Charlie Tahan, I think he was
possible.
in that. I don't know. He's one of those guys I'm like, I know that guy from somewhere. He was in Charlie St. Cloud and I Am Legend, and that was a while ago. She must have been young. He plays Jonathan Crane on Gotham.
There you go.
Anyway... and he plays Wyatt in Ozark, if you're watching that right now. He's really devastated by this, and his friends are really concerned about him, but when suddenly he's not devastated anymore, and acts like, it's, no biggie, and starts sort of changing his behavior drastically, his friend starts being concerned about him and his sanity. And there's a certain amount of, like, this friend concerned about his own sanity as he's having kind of hallucinogenic, hypnagogic dreams. And, I guess those are the parts more than anything people were comparing to Donnie Darko, that and the period piece-ness of it.
Yeah.
Kids riding their bikes around suburbia, what have you. I mean, when it got to the third act, I was really with this film. I really liked it. But it took me a while to kind of totally get with it.
Yeah, no, I agree with you 100%. I kind of feel like this film is like a much darker, demented version of, like, Stand By Me, but, in the 90s or late 80s or whenever it's supposed to take place. It was the first, I think that the first chapter spent most of its time sort of building that nostalgia and building that, like, environment of, like,
the period.
Yeah, and then the second chapter focused more on... this conflict between the friends. And I felt like that was just sort of dragging and dragging and dragging. But by the third chapter, I was, like, definitely dedicated to this movie, and I was into it. And I started to doubt it halfway through, and I was just like, okay, I don't know. This needs to, like, hurry up, or, I need to see something. Give me some deaths or blood or something. But then it definitely followed through in the end. And so I ended up enjoying it very much.
Kind of like a love story you actually get invested in between the primary character and the girl that he really, really likes, but never assumed for a second she would be into him. And when she is, he still doesn't believe it.
Yeah,
you know?
and there's a lot of, like, growing up in this movie, like, over a very short period of time.
And the MacGuffin is an older brother's samurai sword, which was, like, everybody had, like, either an older brother or a friend's older brother
I have, like,
who
four
had
of
a
them in my
samurai
closet
sword.
right now.
You got 4 older brothers, and you
No, I have, like, 4 samurai
Remember what we were saying about keeping an eye on her?
Good news for people who couldn't make it to Fantasia and aren't necessarily going to make it to a festival. This is actually the title we're talking about, apart from Killing Ground, which is currently on release on limited theatrical and VOD. This is actually it's getting released on limited theatrical on September 29th from The Orchard, who won the up-and-coming distribution houses, and then hits digital and on-demand on October 3rd. So this is actually going to be in your home pretty soon if you wanted to.
Not surprising, because they were pushing it pretty hard, and it's worth it. I definitely would recommend this movie.
Yeah, I didn't think it was as good as they were saying it.
Yeah.
They wanted us to think it was, but I still did enjoy it. All right, so Richard, tell us about the movie. I think you were telling me it was one of your favorites.
I think this is definitely one of my favorites.
7852,
which refers to the 78 is the length in seconds of the shower sequence in Psycho, and 52 is the number of cuts in that 78 seconds. And this, insane as this sounds, this is an hour-and-a-half documentary about the shooting
shower scene?
of the shower scene
Awesome.
in Psycho. It's fantastic. I mean, a lot of it is filmmakers talking about about it as a piece of cinema and how it works and how it operates within the context of the film. There was also historical stuff and weird details about how they got it to actually flow and tricks they had to pull, and how come when they pull the curtain apart you can't see Norman Bates' face, that is a brilliant little thing that I was like, that's how you did it. They talked to Janet Leigh's her body double, but it talks about the significance of the scene in the history of American cinema, but also putting it within the context of themes that were within Hitchcock's own career. The one thing I think it gets wrong is that it does present Hitchcock as an American filmmaker and talks about it within the context of American cinema, where one of the key things about Hitchcock was always that he was a British filmmaker making films in America.
Right.
And there are things that are very British about his sensibilities right through his career. But they just say, this is a guy who decided that he was going to go off and turn this Pot Boiler by Robert Bloch into his follow-up film to North by Northwest, and he was going to shoot it in black and white. Everybody's like, have you lost your mind? But it's filled with so many wonderful nuggets of information, including one of my favourite, which I didn't know, that he initially hated the cut, and he was originally going to throw the theatrical cut out and knock it down to 45 minutes and do it as an Alfred Hitchcock Presents.
Wow.
Holy cow.
This was almost never a film. It almost became a TV.
I wonder how much that would have changed, like, modern horror if he had done that.
Because he couldn't have got away with the shower sequence on TV.
Yeah.
No way on the planet.
Interesting.
But this is a really fascinating... this is a
It's interesting all the
film.
modern day people they're interviewing for this as well. Like Guillermo del Toro and what's his name? Eli Roth and Danny Elfman and Elijah Wood and Neil Marshall.
Karen Kusama as well. Benson Moorhead. Jamie Lee Curtis turns up with a great little story about her. And that's one of the nice things. A lot of this is about personal relationships with this scene. And it's her talking about the fact that this is an iconic scene for her mother, and like people always tie her together with it because of her history with horror, and she's kind of going like, okay, this wasn't my scene. This is my mother's scene, and I'm not going to mess with something that was her legacy. This is a really fascinating film doc. I think it's one of the ones that over the past couple of years I've had a lot more time for than, say, Room
237.
237, which I found,
It was one of those.
bland.
I loved the first hour of Room 237, but there was a point I was like, I don't understand why you didn't cut 40 minutes out of this thing.
Or S's for Stanley, which did the festival circuit last year, which I found pretty tiresome, and reinforced my opinion that if I'd have known Stanley Kubrick, I probably would have told him to go fuck himself at least once a week.
Of course.
But this really is this is one of these the fact that they get 90 minutes worth of documentary out of literally 78 seconds of screen time.
But one of the most iconic 78 seconds of screen time ever.
But the thing is, you come out and you're almost like, you know what? This could have been double. I want to see the outtakes from the documentary.
I want to see the gag reel.
This is really, chunks of it is things like Elijah Wood sat on the couch with his friends watching it and just going, "Look at that little detail." This is really right. This is it proves the durability of that film. That you can still do. You can take it apart to this extent. But like I said, it's about a lot of things. It's about the nature of cinema at the time. How censorship changed. Hitchcock's depictions of maternal relationships, his attitude towards gore, his attitude towards nudity, to red herrings. This is really this is really, really fascinating little talk.
By the same guy who did The People versus George Lucas, which I really enjoyed as well.
This is way better than that.
But I really liked it.
Yeah, I feel that's flawed.
Yeah, well, that's because you were more on George Lucas's side than the People's side.
Yeah.
All right, let's talk about our final film, which is the thing that definitely, for me, far and above was my favorite thing that I saw at this. I just love the shit out of this movie, despite the very awkward name. The Laplace's Demon.
Which is actually just... I think that's... because it's an Italian film, I think they didn't quite get the English translation.
Yeah.
Right.
Because it's
otherwise
clunky.
they would have skipped.
It's a clunky title.
Laplace's Demon.
Yeah.
Laplace's Demon.
And it refers to a scientific thought experiment, basically. What if you could... predict every single behavior of everything.
It's basically
if
you know where everything in the universe is,
every atom, exactly where it is,
everything where it is.
You could take that snapshot.
You can tell where it came from and where it's going to go, and you could theoretically model the entire universe.
And the story, which is definitely takes its visual cues from old Universal films, starts off with a team of scientists getting off a boat in a stormy day with a disgruntled boatman onto an island that is pretty much nothing but a mountain with a big old creepy mansion at the top of it.
It's like so House on Haunted Hill.
Yeah. And they've all been invited there by this scientist who lives in the house, this recluse scientist, and they themselves are working on a predictability model, just of like how being able to predict how exactly a glass would break if and they can't make it right, but they all go up into this thing, into this building, and they realize shortly as they find a videotape that from the scientist, the doctor in question,
I think,
that they're all going to be trapped there. And he doesn't explain it first, but eventually is made clear, yes, one by one they are going to die from something in the house. Their only clue what it is for a good portion of the film is there's a full-scale model of the house, beautiful one, right in the room that they're in, that has chess pieces in it that represent each one of them, and in fact is able to move around exactly mirroring their movements. As the videotapes explain, there is no one's controlling this. I pre-programmed this because I was able to successfully predict every single thing you're going to do using my superior model. Right? Sounds like something that's going to be a little too wordy, a little too, like, going off into think piecey stuff, but what you get is a really fun, campy, smart, original horror film. Like horror comedy, kind of.
It's definitely deadpan.
Yeah, very deadpan comedy. Yeah.
At the very beginning, I was like, oh, crap, what did I get myself? Another black and white film. Artsy, like, black and white. And they're just, like, these tight shots of everyone's faces where they're, like, overly exaggerating their movements. And you're just like, okay, this is an Italian soap opera, is kind of what I thought at the very beginning. And then once you get into it and they unveil the model, I was like, okay, this is something different.
Yeah.
I like this. And by that time, I was like into it. I love this movie. This was definitely one of my favorites. It was so clever. and I don't know if you would really call it campy, but it's definitely
It's campy in the sense, like I said, it's kind of a universal old school throwback
stylized.
feel.
Yeah,
but
it's super
got this
stylized.
odd timelessness to it.
Yeah.
That there's this mixture of clockwork and VHS and
computer
very
and
high-end,
Polaroid.
very high-end modeling.
It is weird. Like the camera person's got a Polaroid, but the guy's got a laptop.
Yeah, it was really strange.
And but I thought that worked to its strength. That it throws you off kilter at every
Absolutely.
turn. This is very much in the same mold as something like the black and white adaptation of Call of Cthulhu that came out a few years ago.
Yes.
Or something like The American Astronaut. It's along those lines of deliberately trying to unnerve you and throw you off by not giving you anything solid and real world, particularly to grasp onto, so that you go, okay, it doesn't matter how crazy the concept is. The world is so different that it makes perfect sense, and it really embraces that and pulls it off phenomenally. I have actually already recommended this to a couple of festival bookers I know.
Oh, I did too.
To deal with this kind of thing. It's you need to see this thing.
I sent messages to a couple festival bookers 5 minutes after I finished watching it. I was like, dude,
I think I know the festivals as well.
There's nothing else really like this. I've never seen another movie like it, and it creates its own mythology that inside itself based on that concept of like, what if you could successfully predict everything anybody could do?
Human behavior.
Sets up its hidden villain as a guy who's capable of doing that, and then these characters who their way of thinking their way out of this is trying to second and then third and then fourth guess this model, which of course the model itself is prepared.
Just the model itself is amazing.
Yeah.
And seriously, like, we watch a lot of movies, and so we can, we see we can predict a lot when it comes to movies as far as like human behavior and how the movie's going to end. I was literally holding my breath at the ending of this movie. I was just like, this is a great balance of just like a fun movie that's super smart and really super interesting, as well as being entertaining.
That's the key. It's super fun. I never stopped having fun watching this movie. It's rare you see something that balances. It has a very stylish sense of artiness to it. It's very smart, and yet it's nonstop fun all the way through.
Yep.
It's like Jan Svankmeyer's Clue.
That's good. I like that.
That's not a bad. That's not a bad comparison at all. Actually,
that'll bring us out. Thank you to Richard and Patience for watching all these Fantasia films. Maybe one day we'll all be able to make it out there together for the 3 weeks.
We can dream.
We can go stay on Ted's floor.
One time we'll instead just have a watching party, and I'll make some poutine.
I'll bring the Grolsch.
I'll bring the Molson.
That's there you go. I was thinking of a Canadian beer.
Something like that. Your beer sucks.
We live in Texas. Come on, Lone Star's terrible.
Oneofus.net has been your one-stop shop for all things geek for years. But there's a side to them many of you have never heard. The subscription side. Subscribe and listen to great podcasts like The Breakfast Pub, The Original Gentleman, and the Watch a Movie With Us series. Head on over to oneofus.net and don't forget your towel.